Good evening. We're with the International Dyslexia Association Oregon branch, and it is May, and we are celebrating moms. And so we are going to have a number of our board members who are moms going to be on this Instagram Live feed. So excited to share their journeys and stories with you. Give a quick shout out to the GOAT, though, the greatest of all time, which is my mom. Because without her, I would have never gotten through school. I would never be where I'm at today. So I just want to give a special shout out to her. But I'm really excited to bring on our guest, Rachel. I feel like it's forever since I've been able to see you in person.
I know.
But thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And for you, those that don't know Rachel, she is a board member. She volunteers her time with the International Dyslexia Association Oregon branch. She's a teacher, she's a mom, and just someone that I've really respected, who I've seen work in this space, who I've seen dedicate hours and hours of time. But one thing I wanted to say about you, because I was thinking about you as I was preparing for this, is you've always kept your family first. And I've just respected that a ton and just appreciate everything you do. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. It's good to be here. That's a huge compliment from you, Jared, and I really appreciate it. And but I know you do know from your own experience with your mom, and you've said to me before that without your mom and your dad, you don't know where you would have been. We've talked about that just one-on-one, just when I've talked about some of the grueling aspects of navigating this journey. So
1,000%. So to start with you, but let's talk about, what is it like to raise dyslexic children? Like, what is that process like, and where do we begin?
Yeah, well, raising children, you have no playbook. And raising dyslexic children, it wasn't even something on my radar, I would say, or anyone in my family's radar at the time. Both my husband and I are the oldest in our families. We were the first to have kids. So parenting was just normal. I mean, we were just going through school, and it began for us in first grade with my daughter, actually in hindsight sooner, but we didn't know what we knew. And our daughter was super motivated, hard worker, and was reading all the time, like trying to read all the time. And it was not clicking with her. And we had a great first grade teacher, a great kindergarten teacher, who gave us all these different books to take home and read, and who, wanted to help her. And we wanted to help her. So we were all on the same team. And after a year of kind of navigating that at the end of first grade, I just started Googling the things I was seeing. I would lay down and read with her, and she would miss words she had like 3 minutes ago. And I was like, what is going on? The thing that happened for me is that my kids are not very far apart. And so my son that was younger than her was in preschool, and he was an early reader, and he started to read, and I started noticing that his mistakes were really different from her mistakes. I was like, this is not the same. So I just started Googling, literally internet searching all the different things we saw, and dyslexia came up. I think I was actually taken to Susan Barton's webpage that's like symptoms and signs of dyslexia, and just read through those and just had that like pit in your stomach. Like, this is it. I know that this is what she's dealing with.
And so once you come across that discovery, well, I'm curious, what is that emotion? Like you talk about the pit, and I relate to that, because I remember when I was identified at 5, I had that same pit in my stomach. Like, it was like I'd been caught. Like, I knew that, I always tell people to think back to when you took too many cookies out of the cookie jar, and you were in trouble. What was that experience like for you? Like, what was that emotion?
I'm not going to lie. I vividly remember going into the closet and crying. I just cried. I was like, reading's never going to be easy for her. School is never going to be easy for her. She was my oldest. I had 2 other kids younger. Like, you just kind of flash forward to the future and think, gosh, this isn't what I imagined, which is part of the story, I think, and the great part about being where we're at now, because now I feel like I hopefully can give some parents hope on where you go. But I was sad. I like was grieving and mourning because it wasn't, and I didn't know anything. And I had a master's in teaching. I was like, I don't know anything about this. So then it was just rapid research at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting because I love how you said it. You knew it wasn't gonna be easy. And I think some people make the mistakes like they say the kids can't do it or they're not capable. They're capable. It's just gonna be a continual challenge.
Mhm.
So I love how you say that. And so where do you go from there as a parent? So you kind of know what's going on now. You've realized this dyslexia. What's the next step?
So phase two for us was, what does she need? Well, getting her tested was the first phase for us. And what that looked like for us, I luckily looked up the IDA. I didn't realize it at the time. I looked up resources, I think through Barton's website, and I got a woman named Cheryl Anthony, actually, who kind of asked me a bunch of questions and said she needs to be professionally tested. I said, okay, great. We got someone to come out and test her. She confirmed, yes, she has dyslexia. And then the conversation, what does she need? And the person who tested said she really needs interventional tutoring. She needs to learn how to read. Um, so we had to take a look at that. I was staying at home. Of course, we had very good parent support from our parents, which is part of the journey that I'll talk about in a little bit. Um, so we found a tutor. It's very expensive. I think that the justice of that for me early on was like, wait a second, why do we have to do this outside of school? Um, why do we have to get private tutoring? I remember thinking to myself, sorry for anyone out there, like other people I know are buying new cars and we're getting tutoring for my child per month, because that's really the reality in my mind. Was it's a car payment per month to do that for our kid. I pulled my daughter in second grade. She started second grade in her school, and the teacher fit she had was not a good fit. I think that teacher was a good person, but it was a very stifling classroom. And I just knew that she was going to wilt in that situation. And so our boundaries had changed. We knew she was going to end up going to a new school the following year. So I decided I would homeschool her. She was literally, what, 6? So I had a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old in preschool, and a 2-year-old at home. So you do what you do, but that was never, ever a part of my plan.
Well, and you hit on so many layers just in this segment right here is one, there's a whole equity piece to this
Oh,
because
yes.
you're having to pay for additional education, which I mean, I'm thankful my parents they had the resources to do the same with me.
Mhm.
Um, but there's so many that don't, and we've had this conversation is like there's why isn't this just provided? Couldn't we create a system that's universal and that would teach everyone and be an inclusive education system? So there is this level to this conversation. How do you balance all this being mom, teacher, like super person essentially to I mean those are take on homeschooling is no joke as you know. So
Yeah. And, I don't, oof, that was a really difficult decision for us. And I don't know that I did it very well. I think that was a blur for me. And I would just encourage moms out, if there's any moms out there who are early on in their journey, just stay strong and do what you know you need to do for your kids at this moment. Because I think I was in survival mode for that moment. Like I knew that I began to look around and think about other kids potentially, slightly, but I was like, I'm in survival mode right now, and I just need to get my daughter to a good point. And I actually literally in my head was like, I can't take this on for everyone right now, even though I want to take this on. So I battled with that for a lot of years, just getting my own kid and then kids what they needed, knowing that other kids weren't getting that. So that's always tugged in my heart. But I think I just kind of went into survival mode. and just did what I needed to do, put my head down and found out everything I needed to do. Had a tutor that felt better to me, that at least in that category of reading, she was getting tutored professionally. I didn't have to have that battle with her. And then I could do the other supplemental stuff. And really my hope was that my kid at the end of the day wouldn't hate school, that she would like learning. And I just didn't want her to hate where she was going. So
Yeah. So what does that look like to get her at a level that maybe where the chaos is I don't want to say gone, but maybe it's the volume's turned down on the chaos. Like what does that look like for a student?
Well, for me as a mom, it meant instilling other positive messages to my daughter, like, you're not just dyslexic, and dyslexic isn't just a bad thing. There's many beautiful things that have come from dyslexia. So talking about her identity in a bigger picture was always important to me. You're not just your grades. You're not just your spelling tests. You're not just the writing pieces that you do. You're more than that. You're our daughter. You're special. And we have faith too. So like, God loves you and we love you, and you're made specially this way. And so that's what that looked like for me. And then really, I think finding other activities and things that she enjoyed.
So two questions on this. One, did she buy into that piece? Because so often we see with students that social, emotional, that confidence can get shattered early on. So does she buy into that? And then what is those other pieces around her where she can feel that strength and her great qualities that she clearly she has great qualities, but like where she can bring those talents to surface and show people what she can do?
So did she buy into that? Yes, it took time, but she did. I also found out later, much later, which is part of kind of a crazy part of our journey. Like Riley was diagnosed in first grade, but I have two other boys, and my youngest, like there came a time and he was in third grade, then fourth grade, and he wasn't even diagnosed until later, which I felt a tremendous sense of guilt for, because I was like, I should have known this. But that's another message I would say, is that no two kids manifest dyslexia the same. And I didn't know that. The way that they did not process language correctly was very different between the two. So, she took she heard my message. My other son, that's a little harder.
Sure.
Not as face value.
Yeah, it's a tough
Like,
one.
you're my mom. You're telling me that. Of course you think that. Like, of course.
There is something to this though, because I think that parents obviously are, I know that I challenged my parents, and I assume that a lot of parents get challenged, but I do think those messages win out over time. So while you may seem like you're putting your head against the wall a little bit and trying to reach them, those messages do carry out over the long run.
Thanks for that reminder.
Yeah, stay with it.
We're
for
still
sure.
we're all still in it all the time.
We're always in it. Still in it today. I mean, reading a menu is still a challenge for me. I talk about it all the time. What else do parents need to know in navigating the school system? One of the things that I so appreciate about you is whenever I've been in a room with you, and I know it's been at least a year, but you have all these answers. Like, the 504 plans, the IEPs, like what are some of those things that you could hit on that maybe would be. So, by the way, you're getting a ton of shout outs here.
I know. Hi, Preston. Thanks. I teach Preston at Edison, so I've seen him like pop up here, and I've seen family members on here. So thank you guys for joining. I appreciate it very much.
Well, you're definitely loved by them for sure.
For 504, navigating school. So actually, I would say that for us, that was a really tumultuous time, to be honest. We did not have an easy time getting either of our kids what they needed. It was a lot of meetings with a lot of no's, and I had to kind of do my own research and read the law and talk to experts and educate myself. And I think what was frustrating for me, and no one should be surprised still to this day, because actually I was doing the math, and since Riley, my daughter, the first time she was diagnosed around 6 or 7 years old, and she's 20 now. So it's been 13 years. I mean, that feels weird to me, but I've been in this for quite a while. I was surprised at what other people didn't know in the school system. I had to reframe some things. I was surprised that the teachers weren't taught about how to teach students with dyslexia explicit, systematic reading. That was a big surprise for me. It actually turned out that my husband is dyslexic. We didn't know at the time. When we found out that Riley was, like, you have to go through some genetic information. And then actually there was just flashbacks to times where I was like, oh, that was really creative spelling, or, oh, reading fast has never been a thing for him. But the interesting thing is that he had, I'm convinced, he had phonics teaching in elementary school. So he was given some rules and tools. And so I think that it didn't look the same as for my kids. So that was interesting. 2, I needed to fight for what my kids needed. And I needed to educate even the administrators and some of the teachers. And so you have to do that really gently. Like, that the teachers, you have to believe teachers get into teaching because they love kids and they want to help them.
Totally.
And I totally felt like all of my kids' teachers really did want to help my kids. They were just never given tools. So I could never really get mad at their teachers. I just had to say, I know that you weren't given these tools, and here's some information if you're interested in reading. And in their minds, and they've told me this later because I've kept some really great relationships with some of them. Like, they had Rolodexes of kids going through their heads of like, oh my gosh, that's what that kid was, dyslexic. Oh my, and guilt and shame they felt for not knowing. And I felt really bad for that, because they wanted to know what to do. So that was one piece that I encourage parents to make sure that you don't burn bridges, that you kind of keep in mind that teachers really are doing the best that they can. And even in my master's of teaching, I never was taught about dyslexia, what that looks like, what the symptoms are, what I should be looking for. And I had conversations with teachers. In fact, a teacher friend who is near to my heart, who taught my kids in first grade, later came to me when her kids were in 6th and 8th grade. And it's like, I think my own kids have dyslexia. And I found her someone to test them. And in fact, they do. And so she was navigating that late in the game as a first grade teacher, who was an amazing first grade teacher. So that's the reality of what's out there. Then the 504 piece, that's just stories of truly PTSD for my husband and I. We had the district legal counsel in meetings. That was hard.
So
that was really hard.
As you're talking, I just keep getting the vision of, and I know it's different fields, but you think about the people that are navigating like the flight desks when you go to an airlines, like they haven't been given the tools to tell you that they can what time your flight can take off. Like, they just don't have that information. Like, they're doing the best they can. And it's kind of sounds like the teachers are in the same boat with a lot of this. It's not that there isn't a willingness to help or that there isn't a desire, but it's like the lack of foundational knowledge that has been shared or given throughout their education.
Yeah. And I don't want to belittle people who have experienced it. Like, there are some negative experiences out there where people are unwilling to be flexible and learn, but that's really the minority. That's one thing, not to plug IDA and what we do on the board, Jared, but one thing that I really love doing is sending out information to teachers, whether it be through my Facebook or just in conversations. My next door neighbor is a teacher. I don't know if she's on here, but she'll watch this later. But just saying, we have free scholarships for you to learn all of this. And most of the teachers, they've applied and gone to them and been so wowed by the education they get and the information. Plus they have years of teaching, so they already can process, oh, that's what that is. And that is one amazing thing that we do is it's just training teachers with knowledge that they already want to know. That's research-based, proven, systematic, done by the National Center of Research in the United States or the world, and they can get behind that because it's all research based. They just never knew about it.
Totally agree. And I do love that about our organization, that we're there to be a support and resource and provide those tools. So on this topic, by the way, there's people that can definitely relate to what's been going on with you.
I still have nightmares about IEP. You know what? Me too, Shelby. And anytime I get like an official communication email from somebody, an administrator or school personnel that's regarding my kids, I kind of like have this quickened heart rate, like, before I open it, because of just all of those early on experiences. They were not good.
Yeah, those battles, they sound very similar to what my parents, I went through one summer and read they were handwritten notes at the time. I was in school before, like all the emails, but just back and forth of like even trying to prove that dyslexia existed.
Yes.
Where would you like to see educate? I want to get into what you do as an educator, but before that, where would you like to see education go? Like how do we make this process better?
Well, I mean, I feel like the legislation that we had in Oregon was a good first step, but then I think, if we're just being honest here, quickly we saw as that unfolded, we're like, this isn't really the step we thought it would be. I mean, universal screening for the possibility that students have dyslexia in kindergarten and first grade is great, because it actually is the state saying that there is dyslexia and it should be screened for. So that I felt like was really good. But really what it should be is, instead of reading pullout, all kids should have the opportunity to be tutored systematically in their one-on-one time or their 5-on-1 time, instead of just reading more books that they can't decode. They really need to have that opportunity for all kids to be tutored and not cost, I don't know what it is now, $40, $50, $60 an hour, 2 to 3 to 4 times a week, which is totally outprices most families. That's really that. And then teacher training. Early on, my daughter's roommate in college is going to be an elementary school teacher. And I've literally said to her, before you go into the classroom, I am going to sit you down and we're going to talk about all of this. And, she actually she's in California. She had a little training on dyslexia, but it's just not enough. It's not enough to really give the teachers a grasp. The student empowerment panel, having actual students talk to teachers about what they experience. I think the mental health piece and what they feel about themselves is, I think, maybe the most powerful. Like, they're literally kids sitting at desks thinking that they are stupid and dumb and will never go to college just because they have dyslexia.
Yeah, you're given that piece of paper, right, with the instructions, and you don't know what to do because you can't actually get that information to process through your brain the way. Does that responsibility fall on higher ed? Is that a fair question? Maybe I can pull that one back.
Well, I do. And I remember being parts of conversations where it's like, well, you're asking so much. We have to completely revamp our higher education program because we only have so many hours to teach so many things. So I don't know, maybe an evaluation of, well, if you have really 10 to 20% of the population being affected by this, plus knowing that all of the ways that you can, all of the interventions for dyslexia actually also help students, second language learners, and it's not just dyslexics, and they are not a detriment to readers who take reading in naturally. They actually help all readers. Maybe it should be a priority above other things that maybe affect smaller populations. I don't know. That's really hard to say. Education is complicated. And in my master's of teaching, the very first class they have you take is politics and education. So I was like, oh, they have you take politics and education first. But yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Fair, fair. All right, we'll leave it at that. So if you're in higher ed and you have policy making ability, it would be helpful if you could bring science of reading to your program. You work at an amazing school, and I want to give a shout out to Edison because I think it's amazing to have an inclusive education environment. What has that process been like as an educator for you and working at a school like that?
Well, that is a journey. I think for years I kind of said, I don't want dyslexia to be my thing. I don't want dyslexia to be my thing because it was so painful for me to experience the frustration and pain of my own kids. I just felt like I can't relive this all the time. And then there became a point in my life where, to be honest, my phone was ringing off the hook pretty often, like once a week, if not more. One parent here who was like, oh, talk to Rachel, she knows about dyslexia, or another parent here, or a family member. We had family members who came through diagnoses, multiple, because there is a genetic component. And so having long, which I'm happy to do, hour-long multiple conversations about encouraging parents, like, you're okay, you can do this, stand up for what you know is true, what the school told you. Sometimes, not all schools are like this. Some schools manage it well. Another board member that we have is in the same district as I, and she had a much more positive experience than me. And so it does vary. But just telling people that what you know about your kid, that is true. And don't let somebody tell you that it's not a big deal or that it's not real. So that led me then, I was like, okay, I'll put my foot back in education and start subbing. And actually I came across Edison uniquely. Like, I started subbing at Jesuit, and then I was asked to sub at Edison, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this school teaches students with learning differences. This is like up in my wheelhouse. And so for me, teaching there, I truly think, and my kids know this too, I look at each kid. I have 3 kids. They are all totally unique of each other. They've been raised by the same 2 parents in the same home and only 22 and 23 months apart. Yet they are so different. And just the experience of those 3 kids, I can look at every student that I have and, I don't know, perceive the humanity of them and the struggle behind the scenes that I saw in my own home that they're not necessarily forthright about, but you can see it in their countenance and their just their body language sometimes when they first come to us, just like defeated. So not all, but a lot.
Yeah.
And be creative in the way that I would for my own kids. Like, okay, how's this kid gonna learn? And I have the benefit of having small class sizes where I can actually get to know the students really well and get to know their learning profile. So I feel really fortunate about that. But it's definitely, my journey led me here, and I feel super blessed that I can put kind of the struggle and all of the things we experienced into a positive light for advocacy and encouragement and finding the right way to reach each different kid. So
it's very, very inspiring. You're using all the tools that you struggled with, and you're sharing. I mean, you're giving back. I mean, you talk about being in that survival mode, if you will, but it seems to be a thriving mode now with where you've landed. And
it's hard because I do, like, I know myself better, and there are some areas that I've experienced certain things where my thoughts or opinions or experiences are somewhat strong. And so finding a way to gently and meaningfully share that, for change, or even with colleagues, makes me a better person. But it's that important to me that I would be willing to put myself out there for the right, for doing the right thing with these kids. So.
It's needed, and I know that you and I have talked about this equity piece all along. What is your message I guess if we're look, I want to give you the final word, but and if there isn't something that you or you wanted to touch on that you haven't, but what is your message to the educators or parents or students out there? Like, what would be your closing?
So a few things, and a couple things that I tell all people. I'll do a couple things. One, every kid is different. And if your kid flew under the radar, if you're a parent, if you didn't know what to do, I made different decisions for my daughter and my son. My daughter got tutoring for several years. My son didn't. We found out later he's ADHD, super ADHD. He needed to play sports. He needed to run. He needed to do things. I tutored him a little bit myself, but there was a point for our mental health at home where something had to give, and we had to make hard decisions, even knowing what I know research wise. And so I supplemented in other ways, like, okay, we have lots of audiobooks in our house, or, lots of homework help for our kids, but we just couldn't do it in fifth, sixth grade with an avid athlete who needed to move and be with other people. That was just a family decision. So have grace for yourself. Sometimes I feel guilty over those decisions, and I was just doing the best I could. For those who are, I just attended a special education forum for resources last week. We have breakouts at the end. I was like, there's not going to be very many people in my breakout. And I had 7 or 8 parents come in just wanting to have encouragement, or who are in the beginning of the battle. And the things they were telling me, I was a little disheartened, because I was like, still? It sounds so fresh to me. It's like, that was kind of what I went through. But you've got this. Your kid will be okay. With your support and your love, they know that you're doing the best you can. Give them tools, give them audiobooks, fight for accommodations, find out tech tools, which we talk about, technology that will work for them to make typing or writing or reading more accessible. Use words like ear reading that don't make kids feel like they're not actually reading. Like, I say that all the time, and parents are like, oh, ear reading, that's good. Not audiobooks, or because it makes people feel like they're not actually reading. They're getting stories and vocabulary. So you can do little things too. And then for educators, just keep learning and see each student as unique and individual. My kids all need different things. My students all need different things. And relationship really matters, educators. Your kids who are hiding, your kids who seem like they're not interested, they've just been trodden down before. They need you to pursue them. They probably need you to pursue them more than the ones who are easy to like. I think my daughter was easy to like. My boys are not. I mean, they are. I love them, but they're not. They don't care about being a brown noser. They don't care about looking good. They're authentic. They don't. I could tell my daughter, I don't even know if she's on here, I could tell her to do the things like smile and say thank you, all those things. And she's like, okay, totally. And then my boys, they're like, Mom, I don't want to be a brown noser. Like, that's not me. So teachers kind of need to know that. Like, just because a kid's sitting in the back with their hood on and, doesn't look interested, doesn't mean they aren't interested. They kind of need you to see them. So.
A great message.
And I was really thinking about it, that Dyslexia, you are not alone. What the name of this Instagram is. And I think as a parent and as a student, I think that's really important for parents too. You're not alone. That's really important for teachers who feel like, sad that they didn't know sooner. Like, you're not alone. That's not your fault. And we can just move forward from where we're at with what we know and make the world a little better. So.
could not agree more. Couldn't have said it better myself.
I see some of my students on here too, Peyton and Andre. Hi, Andre, and Preston. I'm like, oh, that's so fun. My sister-in-law. It's good to see you guys. Thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate it.
Danielle Thompson, too, president of our branch, is super thankful for you as well. I want to say one thing. I just think, Rachel, you're such a voice of strength, change, and most importantly, hope for these students, educators, parents out here. So just former President Jane Cooper, bravo. So just very grateful for all your work and taking the time to talk with us tonight.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your work. And thank you for doing this every Monday and for all the things that we're trying to accomplish. We've got to stay strong. If anyone's out there that wants to help us, the more advocates and the more who speak up for these kids, the better, and adults. So
yes, send us a message. You can message us here through the Instagram handle. You can also email us at the branch, International Dyslexia Association, Oregon branch. And it's May, so happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day to you too.
And again, thanks for all your work, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.